Joining us right now is one of America's most successful female entrepreneurs.
Special guest speaker today, the first African-American woman
to own a billion-dollar company. Her name is
Janice Bryant Howroyd. She's the founder and CEO of
Act One is one of the largest staffing companies in the United States.
She's now ranked by Forbes as second wealthiest self-made African-American woman in America, behind only Ms. Oprah Winfrey.
She spent almost 40 years helping others find work.
Janice, great to have you on the show.
Wonderful to be here.
Thank you so much
Wonderful.
for joining us.
Janice, welcome to the program.
Janice, what about your point?
I'm so excited today that my guest is Dr. Tomás Morales, my dear friend. Dr. Morales, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me on today.
Oh, it's such a pleasure. And I know that you finished your meetings up early so that you could join us. Wow, you are keeping an incredible schedule right now. And I'd love to really jump into our conversation around that theme. How busy are you now that the school has been moved to pretty much school from home and work from home?
I've been quite busy. Primarily through Zoom interaction. I've been attending meetings. I've been interviewing candidates. I interviewed 4 candidates for the Dean of the College of Arts and Letters. We meet every morning, our cabinet, 8 a.m. Zoom meetings. And there's anywhere between 8 to 12 participants. This past week, we had a tech talk conference that explored technology and learning and the use of technology in the delivery of instruction. I'm meeting every afternoon at 4 p.m. with the Chancellor White, and the 22 other presidents and 7 vice chancellors. So, and coming Monday, we'll have a town hall meeting with 200 plus members of the Cal State San Bernardino University community to discuss our strategic plan. So while we have moved our instruction to alternative modalities using online, using Zoom, and delivery of student services, we have a telehealth program. We're delivering psychological counseling services, all online. We're trying to normalize the campus calendar. We're really trying to continue to take care of our meetings, take care of our business, to advise students, very important, particularly at institutions like Cal State San Bernardino, minority serving institutions, where academic advising is critically important. So we're doing that virtually via Zoom, old-fashioned phone conferences, using text and other social media outlets to communicate with our students.
Well, I have met that team and much of your team at Cal State San Bernardino. And I have to tell you, it's no surprise to me that you guys are creating a new normal for your students and for yourselves, and that education is still happening. You've said so much that I want to visit, even before we get around to the purpose I really invited you today, because I'm so excited to learn where you see the future for distance learning and the brick and mortar environment that many students are well served by at schools like Cal State University San Bernardino, schools that are serving minority students, primarily who have maybe for the first time in their lives lived away from home, or even had the opportunity to experience many of the technologies you're now talking about in a real way. So these students are coming from different environments than many other students are coming from on the economic level, but you're creating an environment for them where they're competitive when they leave the school on any level. So we're going to talk a lot about that, but you said some things that I want to get into before we go there. One of the things you were sharing with me, and like I said, I've been a guest on the campus, I've been a friend to the campus, I just love the school so much. You were talking about how you are normalizing the schedules for everyone, and you're meeting with so many schools and so many heads. You know, our California school system is it one of the largest or the largest in the nation?
The California higher education is really iconic throughout the United States. You know, we have two major systems, and then of course the community college system, and there is no other in the United States. The University of California system, which is the research intensive, research one institutions like Berkeley, UCLA, UC San Diego, etc. And then you have the 23 California State University campuses that serve over 450,000 students on 23 campuses and employs over 45,000 faculty and staff serving the state of California. Cal State San Bernardino, as you know, serves a region called the Inland Empire. That region is made up of San Bernardino and Riverside counties. Those two counties consist of 26,000 square miles, 4.6 million people. And we are an anchor institution. We serve the region. 85% of our students come from San Bernardino or Riverside counties.
Wow, that's a large campus to have so many students coming from local and likely after they graduate serving back local.
75% of our alumni live in Riverside or San Bernardino counties.
I want to get into something that's a big question today. And I'm seeing a lot of advertising on different levels of media, encouraging students to consider an alternative path to a 4-year degree. And distance learning is being touted as a very successful way to do that. Now, you just talked about the girth of the campus that you president, and when you cumulatively add up the miles and miles of university space that the California school system occupies, how is that going to change post-COVID-19? What's going to happen for the schools, and particularly your school serving minority students post-COVID with respect to that campus experience? And here's the thing, when I was growing up, I could hardly wait to get on a campus. I loved the idea of the university. I loved the idea of the games. I was a cheerleader. You know, a lot of what happened outside the classroom on the campus mattered to me. How is that going to be different for students post-COVID, and particularly those students who are going to be looking at university attendance in the next 5 or 10 years?
Higher education as an industry will change significantly post-COVID-19, but there's always going to be a need for a campus. There's going to be a need for campus life. There's going to be a need for residential halls and for students to live on campus. Having said that, Cal State San Bernardino and the California State University system is primarily a commuter system. And certainly there's going to be room for both. I think that we're going to be able to, at some point, and it may not be until January of 21, we're actually planning to conduct our freshman and transfer orientation virtually. And right now we're planning the fall 2020 semester to virtually. We're not planning to have classes on the campus. And you know, we of course, we don't know the future. We don't know what's going on, but we certainly will continue to offer courses using alternative instructional modalities. We'll see an increased number of courses being offered online. And today, even prior to COVID-19, we had several programs. We have an MBA that's completely online. We have an MSW, Masters in Social Work, that students can take completely online. Our criminal justice program can be taken completely online, our master's in public administration. So we have several programs where students can actually complete the entire degree online. And then we have individual classes that are being taught online. And so we see actually an increase in the number of course sections that will be offered via distance learning. And that's going to be part of the future of American higher education. To what degree that will occur and how quickly that will occur, certainly the future will tell. But there's no doubt in my mind that that will happen. Having said that, I think that the need for the socialization process of particularly at the undergraduate level, the need for students to interact with each other, the need for students to prepare for life after college, how to eat a meal, as you and I have talked about in the past, how to prepare your resume, how to interview. While much of that can be delivered virtually, I don't see it entirely. I don't see brick and mortar being eliminated entirely. I think it's going to be a complement of both in-person instruction, student services, with a significant increase in the number of activities that take place virtually.
You know, when we look at a lot of the old movies, we see campus life portrayed in America and across the globe in such a glorified way that many people are inspired for the socialization that university life offers. College campuses are iconic, you know, across the world. So are you saying that we may still have the marching band? We may still have homecoming games. We may even still have the graduation marches, and parents can come and snap that picture of their kid as they show up on the stage, and they can wave that diploma and they can flip that hat up?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I do not see that disappearing at all. In fact, we're about ready to make an announcement that we are going to postpone our commencement, which is scheduled to take place June 12th and 13th, but we're not going to cancel our commencement. And we certainly am not going to hold commencement virtually. There are some campuses across the country, we've been following this, that are exploring a virtual commencement exercise.
Before, I'd love to know this. Before we go to the broader education system, to stay closer to Cal State University San Bernardino, parents are asking questions about when their kids are going to graduate, not just when they're going to march, and how much classroom or schoolwork they're losing in terms of this. What has been the stride for your particular students? I know that's going to be a different answer across the nation and school by school, but what's been the stride for Cal State University San Bernardino students in terms of graduating on time if you were already on schedule?
Yes, we see a very robust spring quarter enrollment, partly because we're transitioning from a quarter campus to a semester campus. And so we have seniors who want to graduate. They've spent their entire 4 years, some 5 years, in a quarter schedule, in a quarter calendar, and they want to complete their baccalaureate degree before the institution transitions to semester. So students will earn their degree in June. They will complete all of their requirements, and their graduation will be certified by the faculty in June. The question, given the stay-at-home order or the restrictions on large crowds, the question is, when will we be able to bring literally thousands of people into the arena to actually have the ceremony, to actually have that student walk across the stage. And on our campus, we have a tradition that every single student has his or her name called. And we have these large screens, and their picture gets flashed up on the screen. We're scheduled to have commencement on June 12th and 13th at the Citizens Bank Arena. It's now called the Honda Arena in Ontario. And so we've negotiated with them, with the arena, to they can accommodate us on December 14th and 15th for this June's class. And so, you know, we're hoping that by then, the restrictions on large crowds will be lifted, and that indeed we'll be able to have the ceremony. You know, what happens normally is the students go through a June commencement, and then several weeks later, the student receives in the mail their actual degree.
Right.
They will have their degree in hand before the ceremony takes place in December, and we hope that it will take place in December.
Well, you know, Dr. Morales, so many students are at your school and other schools. You're very closely connected to HBCUs in the United States as well. So many students across the university system in the US and across the globe. People are listening to us across the globe. So
Yes.
many students are the first timers in their family to get a university degree. And so it matters a lot to them that their family can be there. In many ways, this is as big for these students as weddings have historically been. And so the world is learning how to have our socialization differently. In a world post-COVID, where do you see the students who attend your university and other kids who are coming from lesser economic environments being able to gain those extra values that they get from attending a land-based university, that proximity to each other and the facility of networking next to each other? I mean, we've often talked, you and I, about some of the values of the school to first generation students. Let's talk about that a little bit and how that plays into the larger education complex.
So to answer your question regarding the importance of campus life, the importance of brick and mortar, I'm convinced that throughout the country, you know, American higher education is unique around the world. And some of the unique aspects are those that you described earlier: commencement, intercollegiate athletic sports at the Division 1, 2, and 3, Saturday afternoon football, the whole marching band, cheerleaders, and whether you're looking at HBCUs or faith-based institutions of higher education, the strength of American higher education is diversity of mission and diversity of each of our institutions around the country. And so while we're experiencing COVID-19 in a way that has moved instruction from in-person to virtual, I don't see the campuses around the globe and certainly around the country disappearing. The State University of New York has 65 campuses make up the SUNY system. The City University of New York certainly has 23 campuses around New York City. HBCUs have this incredible history that dates back to Reconstruction, where institutions like Howard University, North Carolina A&T, and other Morehouse, Spelman. These are institutions that have an incredible history in this country. Not only that, many MSIs, many state universities are connected to their communities, play such a significant role in the economic development of their communities, and provide just an unbelievable number of services to the communities. In fact, there's been studies done where campuses attract, for example, senior citizens, because senior citizens want to live near university centers where there are cultural activities and the arts and music and so forth. Colleges and universities provide continuing education, not just for undergraduates, but for adult education as well. So I just simply do not see, even with the increase number of distance learning programs and online programs, I simply do not see the demise of campuses. Now, I will share with you, and you read this in the Chronicle of Higher Education and other publications that report on higher education, that there are private institutions that are closing up, that are suffering, and much of in the private sector, they're tuition dependent, and so if they lose enrollment, many of them face financial hardships across the country. So some of your small private colleges are really on the brink of bankruptcy. Many of them are merging with other private institutions. I'm not talking about the Stanfords and the Harvards, those large private institutions. I'm talking small private colleges. And so I just simply do not see a change in the infrastructure of American higher education.
Well, let's talk a little bit about that, because whether it's American or whether it's Europe or wherever, schools are looking at how the future needs to be served differently. And one thing you said that I really love you to educate me on, Doctor, is you talked about the advantages of the schools to the community. And many of the schools, including minority serving universities, have health systems attached to them. I know USC, where my kids attended school, has the Keck University and the Keck hospital system attached to it. UCLA, not far down the road, has that, and so on and so on. And so I've got two questions for you that we've just got to address. One is how we continue that post-COVID, and especially the value that they've offered during COVID. The other thing I want you to talk a little bit about is the health of our students going through COVID. So talk about the hospital system, but please, as you talk about that, I know that many universities, with or without hospital systems, especially minority serving universities, have students who have special needs around their own general health. And now they're being burdened with the mental health of so many as well. It's my understanding that depression and depression-like symptoms are occurring across our university communities and within the communities that have depended on the university to help solve and serve toward that. That's a lot for you to unpack, but I know you're smart. You can do it.
Well, there's a concept called eds and meds, and those are educational institutions and medical institutions. And those two institutions are anchors within communities. They're not going anywhere. Hospitals normally do not pick up and move to another country or move to another state, and educational institutions do not move. And so minority serving institutions are predominantly at urban communities, and they provide the source for our nurses, our MDs, our physical therapists, our social workers, and then of course in the education space, they are the primary producers, if you will, of teachers and school principals and educational leaders in the K-12 arena. And so, again, these are institutions that play such a critical role in their respective communities. You talk about COVID-19 and its impact. I mean, the disparities in healthcare based on race and socioeconomic status is being documented every day. Every day you turn on the news and you hear about the health disparities based on race and income throughout the country. There's no community that's immune. Whether you look in Chicago, New York City, Los Angeles, where a disproportionate number of COVID-19 mortalities, deaths, are in fact poor people, people that did not have access, African American, Latino, etc. And that's a major challenge for our society. I know for a fact, because I read the literature in American higher education, that institutions are addressing the mental health issues that are impacting our communities, our campus communities, issues of anxiety, depression, fearfulness, loneliness. And so these are services that today are being primarily delivered virtually. We have a telehealth program or psychological counseling services being delivered by video between practitioner, between the psychologist and the student, or even in groups.
Doctor, are you delivering that in English or are you delivering that in multilingual?
Primarily in English, though there are services that are being offered. Most college students, even if they're coming from a monolingual family, whether it's Spanish or Vietnamese or Hmong, speak English. Now, we do work with parents. Our orientation program, for example, we have a program for parents, and we deliver that both in English and in Spanish. We have a large percentage, and this is throughout the country, of undocumented students. Now, of course, undocumented students come from all over the world, depending on where you are. In Harlem, you have in CUNY, where I served as president at the City University of New York, you have undocumented students who come from Eastern Europe, Russians, and other Eastern European countries. You have undocumented students that come from West Africa. Here in Los Angeles, the predominant group of undocumented students are Latino, Mexican American, Mexicans. And so depending on which part of the country your campus is located, you will serve different students who may not have the documentation. And that's a group of students that are very vulnerable at this point. And so it's incumbent upon campus communities to serve those students and to make sure that they continue, their dreams continue to be realized as well.
Doctor, can you talk a little bit with me about the mental health of students today? Are you seeing anything across the board regarding student mental health during COVID that's kind of different than what you were seeing before?
Even before COVID-19, American higher education has seen a significant increase in the use of mental health services among our students. This is a national phenomenon. Students are coming from high school and community college transfers with those needs, and institutions are trying to meet the needs of those students. We have a psychological counseling center with licensed psychologists. We have a psychiatrist on retainer. And so we deliver those services. We have social workers, certified psychiatric social workers. So we're providing. Do we have enough of those staff? No, we don't. And most institutions across the country really do not have the staff, given the increased number of students looking over the past decade. Now you overlay COVID-19 and the conditions that many families are facing, the loss of the primary breadwinner, the number of deaths that families are experiencing. You're seeing a very significant increase in the students that need psychological counseling services.
And doctor, let me just ask you this.
Yeah.
A lot of our students, not just at minority serving institutions, but a lot of students who, when we speak about the value of a campus life, a lot of these students are leaving home environments that aren't as conducive to their mental health, that once they're on a university campus, they tend to flourish and can graduate out of some systemic issues that may exist in their home communities or their actual home. Not that universities have to be the answer to that. Universities with land-based classrooms have historically offered a lot of relief, a lot of focus, or a lot of interaction with people with different experiences that have helped students to elevate and escape some mental issues or health issues that could be present in their homes. Am I indelicate in saying that or asking that
No,
question?
not at all. I mean, I think that there's not an institution in this country, an institution of higher education in this country, that are not struggling to meet the needs, the psychological counseling needs of its students. And so, as I was suggesting, that only has been, those needs have increased as a result of COVID-19. And the challenge is that we're reaching out to students. We're trying to communicate, increasing our ability to reach out to students and say to them, look, if you need help, these are the services that are available. We have a program where students can call 24/7 if they are feeling depressed, if they're feeling suicidal. They can call a hotline 24/7, 365 days a year. And those services you will find at virtually every American college and university throughout the country, regardless of whether they're MSI institutions or Ivy League institutions. And the fact that you're wealthy and you attend an Ivy League institution or Stanford doesn't mean that you don't have the psychological counseling issues of students at those institutions. I mean, and so I think it's critical that presidents and vice presidents for student affairs and other leaders are in tune with the psychological needs of our students.
Well, let's go forward a little bit. Let's think a little bit forward, Doctor. You're preparing, like so many institutions, students not just who are going to be entrepreneurial in their careers, but students who are going to hire into companies. And now that we are looking at virtual education being a bigger part of the educational experience for students, even before they get to university, but certainly in order to complete a 4-year or baccalaureate degree, how are you addressing those things that were the big questions right before COVID for employers? Questions about graduating students' ability to socialize well, their ability to manage certain situations or culturally offend into a corporate environment versus a student environment. There's so many soft skill sets that employers were looking for very high up on the list pre-COVID that I don't think they'll lose, even as they themselves move toward more of a work from home environment as well.
Yeah.
How does the university not just keep pace, but actually advance some consideration for how students are now going to hire once they graduate? And I know a lot of your own students are working anyway, but just across the university system itself, how does the university keep itself at pace or in front of the need for companies who are going to hire students in a very different environment and from a very different environment?
Well, I think institutions have to invest in career advisement, career counseling, has to invest in programs that really help students make the transition from school to the world of work. And it's interesting, I've been thinking about this whole experience where we have literally moved the instruction. There is no in-person instruction going on around the country, except for those states that have not, and very few have not issued stay-at-home orders. Not everyone, but virtually every institution is delivering their instruction virtually. Very few institutions are having students in a classroom, with the exception perhaps of some states. I think there are about 8 states that have not issued a shelter-in-place or stay-at-home order. Then, of course, Liberty University has been very well documented, where their president instructed their students to come back to campus after Easter break. And so I've been thinking much about what are the skill sets that students can develop using these alternative instructional modalities like what you and I are doing today. And so I'll just share my example of my oldest son. My oldest son has an MBA. He works for Ernst & Young. And even before COVID-19, many of his meetings were done virtually. Many of his meetings, many of his interactions with his clients were done on conference call. He would travel. His consultants do a lot of travel. Today, 100% of his interaction with his clients representing Ernst & Young are in fact done by video conferencing, just the way you and I are interacting this afternoon. And so our students who would never have had this experience are now gaining, because many companies, as you know, will have a meeting virtually rather than pay 25 people to take an airplane to the corporate headquarters, if you will, for a 3-hour meeting and then take a plane back to wherever they are located. They have to interact virtually. Going back, so those are skill sets that I think if there are some silver lining to COVID-19 from an instructional perspective or from a perspective of career development, this is one of them. I think that our Entrepreneur Center will have a lot of work ahead of it, where many companies, many small companies are really suffering economically. Some companies may not survive COVID-19, particularly companies that are led by women and minority-owned companies that are smaller. They will have to work close. I mean, I'm hopeful that our Entrepreneur Center will take the initiative to work with those companies throughout the Inland Empire that need the expertise that our center can provide them once we get through the other end of this crisis. But going back to your initial question about preparing students, institutions have to make an investment in career advisement, in helping students from their freshman year. I believe that we start this process as soon as the student enters the institution. You don't wait until they're a senior and even a junior. You really start this process of having these discussions. What's life after you earn your baccalaureate degree, regardless of whether you're at an HBCU or at the State University of New York. You really have to begin to think, particularly for first generation students, because often they don't have mom or dad who have the connections who are able to help them. Now, one of the interesting things that I'll share a conversation that I had with one of our students at Cal State, and one of them, student was saying, student was having some issues and some problems. And I said to the student, well, have you had a chance to go home and talk to your mom and dad? And the student looked at me and said, my mom and dad don't have a clue about what higher education's about.
Wow.
They mean well, they care about me, they love me, but certain questions that I have, they really don't have that experience because they never went to college, right? They never graduated from college. And that's where academic advising, career advising plays such an important role. And I don't believe that American higher education makes the kind of investment that we need to in order to prepare students for the corporate world, in order to prepare students for life after they earn their baccalaureate degree or their master's degree or their associate's degree for that matter. And so that's an important area that we need to pay attention to in higher education. We meaning those of us that run these institutions and deliver those services to our students.
Doctor, let me ask you a question that kind of shifts, but I think you'll see the connection to what you've just talked about and the answer to this question. What are the biggest challenges that you're seeing right now across the university system, and how are we addressing that at a national level? How competitive are we in a global environment? Because I can see that with distance learning becoming a bigger part of the university system's experience, that students may start to not just look nationally wherever they live for university, but they may start to attend global universities now, or universities outside of their own nation, if distance learning becomes the bigger thing, even if it's a temporary bigger thing. Do you get the gist of where I'm going and what I'm asking?
Yeah, I mean, I think that again, students, there's a whole movement on merit badges, if you will, where students are developing relationships with multiple institutions taking courses from multiple institutions, putting together a portfolio of experiences, both in and outside of the classroom. And the classroom could be a virtual classroom, to develop the kind of skill sets for them to be more competitive and for them to be able to contribute to organizations that may hire them. And I think that you see more of that occurring nationally. I think most importantly, students have to, and institutions have to be open to allowing students to gain those experiences. Sometimes institutions in higher education take a proprietary position with its students and place obstacles in the way for students to take advantage of taking a distance learning course or an online course at another institution. I know that the California State University system and other large systems are looking at ways where students, if the course that they need is not being offered at their home campus, that they're able to take that course or have that experience at another institution and bring it back to their home institution, and it would be accepted towards their ultimate certification or degree. And I believe you're going to see more of that, and you're going to see institutions being more open to those arrangements. You already see it, and it's happening across the country.
I love that we can be more collaborative in education across universities, and that we can have, universities without walls reach even another level. Companies certainly hire people across nations now. Many people who can work distance can actually look for work differently than they did historically. So what do you think is going to be the ongoing role, or any big, maybe significant changes in how companies are working with universities to assure that we are graduating students who are ready for work and who have certain skill sets that companies are looking for in a new distance working environment than we did historically? Is anything different now, or is it still a skill and you just add distance on top
Well,
of it?
I think that you have to develop the skills. It's not just taking courses and accumulating credits and earning a degree. I think that internships, working in clinical and practicums are critically important. I mean, I think, you see that traditionally in the medical profession. You see it in social work, in teacher education. And I think that there are other areas that would benefit from making part and parcel of one's program to have an internship opportunity, or to have a hands-on. I really believe, I was provost at Cal Poly Pomona, and it's a polytechnic, and its mission was learn by doing. And I strongly believe in that paradigm. And so I think it's important for students to have that experience. And so I will share with you that we provide many of our students, I'll come back to my home institution if I may, just to give you this example. Many of our students cannot afford not to work. They're poor, they're trying to get their baccalaureate degree, but they have to work to help with their bills, help their family. And so what we've done is put together a pool of money with the student government, and we're paying students to have an intern experience at a nonprofit organization, and so we're actually paying students when we are working with for-profit institutions to split the costs with companies, because it costs companies money to have an internship program.
Oftentimes there are stronger intern programs with a company if you commit to come to hire once you graduate. Here's a question that that I think lines up with what you're talking about right now. Doctor, how much of a role should corporations have in designing curriculums, not just in offering interns to kids who are part of a school that happens to have educated them thus far in a certain way?
Very, very important. So we have it, for example, the Jack H. Brown College of Business and Public Administration has advisory boards. I think institutions that are really innovative, AACSB accredited business schools throughout the country, University of Central Florida hospitality management program has a very close relationship with Disney, but not only to send students to Disney to work, but to have executives from Disney on their advisory committee to inform the faculty and to contribute to the curricula changes. Cybersecurity programs, also very, very important throughout the country. I'm going to be involved on April 27th in a webinar, in a virtual conference with a number of MSIs to talk about just that. How do we expose our cybersecurity students to real life experiences? Earlier today, we had a conversation about exposing our students, our nursing students, our physical therapy students, and having them work at medical centers. There's a great need for, they're plucking doctors right before they graduate. As soon as the MD walks through the stage, they're being rushed off to a hospital. So, it's these experiences that are critically important. And I think higher education has to do much more of that. This kind of apprentice role, this opportunity to partner with corporations. American corporations are spending a very significant part of their overhead actually retraining baccalaureate degree recipients. And I think that it behooves institutions of higher education anywhere around in the country to develop those advisory boards. At Cal Poly Pomona, the College of Engineering has a very active advisory board for each of the departments: civil engineering, mechanical engineering, electrical engineering. And those advisory board members actually inform the curriculum. Critically important.
So, Doctor, you are so informative, so darn right smart, and you speak so eloquently, but your students, and I know you really cool too. Tell us what's pissing you off about education right now. I hope pissing off isn't a curse word because I don't curse, but really, what gets your goat right now about higher education, or even before university level?
Well, the United States used to be #1 in the world in earning and producing baccalaureate degree holders. We're now 12th.
Well, who's number one?
I think South Korea, about 85% of their students, their high school students, go on to earn a college degree. There are 12 other countries that are ahead of us. 38% of Americans go on to earn a baccalaureate degree.
Did it kind of pick up after World War II and then drop after?
Exactly, and this is what President Obama really focused on during his presidency, to increase the number of students to earn a baccalaureate degree.
Is that a general number, or does that number have any dramatic differences when you break it down
Absolutely,
to race?
and I don't have those numbers off the top of my head, but there's a significant, the number that I just gave you is across the country, everyone. When you look at the Inland Empire, when you look at the 4.6 million people that live in Riverside and San Bernardino counties, only 19% of the adults over the age of 25 have a baccalaureate degree. It is one of the lowest metropolitan areas of over 1 million people.
So California, with one of the largest school systems and university systems in the nation, still per capita has the lower number of baccalaureate degrees of people who are graduating from high schools in the school.
The two areas in California, the Central Valley and the Inland Empire, have the lowest baccalaureate degree attainment rates in California. Now, when you go to the Bay Area, it's more affluent and they have a higher percentage of their adults over the age of 25 who have a baccalaureate degree. So when you ask me what's keeping me up at night as a higher education leader, I would say access and success. Not just access, but success, and making sure that we're doing everything we can to increase the success rate of students. I believe that any student who enters an institution of higher education who does not graduate is really the failure of the institution. That's, I believe that philosophically. Now, some colleagues will say, well, that's the student's fault. They didn't work at it. They didn't apply themselves. And that may be true, but I think institutions of higher education, regardless of where you operate, you have to take ownership, just like companies do, right? If you have a product and your product fails in the marketplace, then you got to look at yourself inward and find out, well, why did my product fail? What do we need to do differently?
How, Dr. Then, do you balance the recruitment or the acceptance of students at the freshman level with the matriculation? And by that I mean, are we accepting students who don't intend to graduate or who are testing life between high school and adulthood versus students who are serious about it? Or is there something very different that formulaically needs to be addressed?
The differences often lie in the type of institutions that you look at. So for example, this country has one of the most expansive community college systems in the world. California has 119 community colleges, but there are obviously community colleges across the country. You have an organization called the American Association of Community Colleges. And so there are two major purposes of a community college. One is students who come to a community college to earn a terminal degree. I'm going to go and become a radiologist. I'm going to go and be a fireman. I'm going to go and be an auto mechanic. And they don't need any other credential other than earning that degree. They have no intention of transferring to earn a higher degree, to earn a baccalaureate degree. The other bucket is, of course, those students that decided they're going to go to a community college and then transfer to a senior college to earn their baccalaureate degree. And many, another very common characteristic of MSIs is the high percentage of transfer students that come into minority serving institutions. And so those are, that's a whole nother category of students who enter the community college and then transfer to a 4-year college to earn their baccalaureate degree. What we have to do is make sure that there are clear pathways so students that take the courses at the community college, those courses apply towards a baccalaureate degree, and they can complete their baccalaureate degree in 2 years after they complete the 2-year degree, okay? So that's critical to align those courses. If you want to be an accountant and you start at a community college as an accounting major, then all the lower division accounting courses apply to the accounting degree, and those students that want to sit for the CPA are able to do so.
Yeah, Doctor, many students who look at university or application to university historically think about the brand of the university in relationship to their family or their community, or they may look at a more serious level, what they want to be and which school's going to offer them the better degree for that. And that may or may not have worked well for students, especially as you talk about matriculation across the university system. What should a student be looking at when they're looking for a school? What are the big things they should be looking at beyond those two key items, if you agree that those are two consideration points that are high on a student's list?
I think it has to start at an early age. You know, I have 3 adult children. They all went to college. 2 of the 3 earned master's degrees. My wife and I really are proud of that. And so, you know, we both, you know, every child is different. But I will tell you that we have to work with parents, and that process of exploration needs to start earlier in high school.
But doctor, when you're talking about the reality of where our students are coming from, if we're talking about now minority serving institutions, and in every instance that's not the case, many of these students, by your own admission, are coming from homes where the parents don't have a relationship to what a university is, nor what it should offer. So the thing that one student looks for and another student may look for that same thing may be dramatically influenced by where they're looking from.
Yeah, and that's why, you know, admissions, outreach, admissions, orientation, you know, one of the things parents, you know, poor parents who do not have a baccalaureate degree, may not even have a high school diploma. They love their children. I mean, most parents love their children and want the best for their children, even if they're not highly educated. And so systems have to be developed to help parents help their children make the right choice. When someone comes up to me and says, "Hey, Dr. Morales, you've been in higher education for 44 years. You know this business. My child is a junior. What college should my child go to?" And what I will say to them, well, does your child want to go to an urban institution or a rural institution? Do they want to go to a small college or a large university? So, you know, you get what I'm saying. I mean, I think that the young person has to decide environmentally where they should go. I will share with you that worked, I have a good friends in, oh, well, I'll share with you, I think we could, Paulette Brown Hines, who interviewed you on campus, right? Paulette's niece got accepted to every UC school, every CSU she applied. She was very, very smart. She got accepted to Spelman. And I was talking to Pauline's brother, the father, Hardy Brown Jr., and he asked me that same question. And I said, well, you know what? She's lived in the Inland Empire her entire life. She's got these grades. Spelman was offering her a full ride. I said to him, oh boy, I think she'll have an incredible experience at Spelman that she will not be able to have at UCLA or San Diego State. And sure enough, she went to Spelman. She's already graduated. She's getting her doctorate at UCR, but she spent a year in Japan. She speaks Japanese.
A rich experience.
She could not have received that experience. Now, she could have had a great education at UCLA or any of the other California public institutions of higher ed, because she was very motivated, highly driven. But she had this incredible experience at Spelman. She made the right decision. Fortunately, her parents, who are very educated, were able to advise her. The challenge is for us to work with parents who may not be as knowledgeable, to help them understand how to navigate that journey, how to navigate that decision-making process so that their young child goes to the best institution that meets his or her needs.
And you say something that has a lot in it, because she made a choice of an HBCU over some really strong branded schools.
Absolutely.
And we're finding that many HBCUs are having a higher and higher enrollment of young white women, young white men, non-minority students. And so the HBCU really is, the H is becoming more strongly a word, historically Black university or college, or as in your instance of leadership on minority serving institutions.
Yeah.
When you were going to school, what was so different that should have stayed that didn't? And how have schools improved in ways that you wish they'd been when you were going to school? You just mentioned 44 years in education. Well, nobody's going to believe that when they see you. But for those who are listening, what was quite different for you that needed to change and that shouldn't have changed before we finish up our conversation?
Well,
today?
I grew up low and middle class. I needed financial aid. I grew up in the Bronx, and I ended up going to a state university, like the institution to some degree, like the institution I'm associated with today, public higher education. My entire education from K through my doctoral work have been at public institutions. So higher education was transformational for me. But I will share with you that I had some great mentors. I had faculty and some staff, some administrators who really showed me the way, and who I have and who I maintain those relationships today. And these are people who are now retired, but when I was a freshman, they welcomed me and helped me and influenced me and validated me as a student. And I owe them I owe them a lot. I mean, I owe them, I was motivated, and I at the end of the day, you got to do the work, right? I mean, but I had mentors who really provided me with just incredible mentoring, if you will, and showed me the way.
So the mentoring was really important, and I don't know how rich that is on lots of campuses, regardless of the marketing. I can say that in my own experience, North Carolina A&T has some very rich mentors as well. One of the presidents of a major pharmaceutical company for many years, he held that role, shared with me that his mentor at North Carolina A&T literally dragged him out of bed one morning to get him into the classroom. Now, I don't know where that's legal anymore or whether that's practical anymore, and in a distance learning environment, whether it's even, an option anymore, but it did speak to the commitment and the care that the instructor had, because they saw something in the student. And I know on your own campus, your influence around how you care and how you mentor, whether it is in a moment or whether it is toward the full length of the student, is reflected and repeated amongst the teams who teach your students, the professors, and the professional people on your campus. I will ask you this question before we finish this conversation. What do you think the promise of an institution of higher learning should be to any student and to the community that institution looks to serve? What's the common promise that institutions of higher education should be offering?
The promise is really to do everything that the institution has to ensure that the student is successful. That really is the bottom line. That's the promise.
And is successful in this moment, meaning matriculates toward baccalaureate or higher degree?
Not only ensuring that the student finishes the program of choice, right? I want to be a cybersecurity, get a background in cybersecurity, and I want to get a bachelor's degree in entrepreneurship. But then continue the relationship with that student as alums. And one of the things that I've inspired my colleagues in the advancement space, Kim, who really provides extraordinary leadership, Kim China, is our alumni association really needs to ensure that we not only stay connected with our alumni, but that we're there for them, that we provide support, because as you know, in your world, people change careers multiple times throughout their lifetime. And so institutions of higher education must be dedicated not only to their current students, but to their alumni and their families.
That's big. That's really big. Well, Doctor, I've certainly enjoyed this conversation today, as I enjoy all of our conversations. Help us be informed and help us be hopeful. What should we be reading right now? What are you reading right now?
Okay, so I just read Frederick Douglass's biography by David Blight. Now, Frederick Douglass had two extraordinary autobiographies, but this is the first biography. David Blight's a professor at Yale. My son gave it to me for Christmas. And so I just finished, it took me a while, 750 pages, but fascinating history. My undergraduate degree is in history. So, and I have, so one of my mentors that I talked about was a history professor, Jerry Soren, and he taught Civil War history. And so he, in fact, I called him after I read the book and I said, you're the person that got me interested in Civil War history, Reconstruction. Then I read just recently 2 books by Colson Whitehead, Underground Railroad and The Nickel Boys. I'm sorry, it's about a reform school in Florida that was just horrific towards young people, but also it was segregated. And so, you know, I read as much as I can. I mean, I don't often last too long because I have long working days, but those are some of the books that I've been reading.
Well, I'm sure a lot of us are going to want to read those as well. Thank you so much, Dr. Tomas Morales. You are incredible as an educator, as a leader, and you're pretty darn great as a friend too.
Thank you.
Thank you. All of our listeners have had such an opportunity to learn from you, to be inspired from you, and now they've got something. They've got homework. They can go back and read the books. And as ever, my conversation is coming from my home to yours with love.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.